I hope you're ready to learn. It's time for a science lesson. So before we start, I just want to say, try not to get too bogged down on the minutiae of the terminology that I'm talking about. What I want to try and do in this video is just hopefully share some fun facts about the science behind your hair and help you understand it a little bit better. So in this video, I'm going to cover follicle shape, follicle size, protein, humectants, and porosity. Now, some of those terms you might be familiar with if, like me, you've been looking after your curly hair for a few years. Now, I'm going to start off with a nice simple one, follicle size. As you might have already guessed, the size of the follicle determines the thickness of your hair. So if you've got a larger, more open follicle, that is going to give you thicker hair than if you've got a smaller, closed follicle. Now, the follicle shape determines whether your hair is going to be straight or wavy. So, if the follicle goes straight into your scalp, as you might have guessed, you will have straight hair. If the hair comes out your scalp at an angle, you'll have wavy or curly hair. It is possible for the follicles to change shape if, for example, hormones come into play. So, you could have straight hair as a child, but then once puberty hits, your hair could start to curl. That's why you'll often find that curly hair is drier and coarser than straight hair. It's because with straight hair, the oils that your scalp produce can just go straight down, whereas with curly hair, it's got more of a journey and it's harder for the oils to reach the ends of your hair. Next, I want to talk about how protein affects your hair. The best way to visualize it is see protein as the building blocks of your hair. The main component of your hair is keratin, which is actually a protein. Using heat, such as straighteners and curling tongs, and chemicals such as bleach and permanent hair dyes, breaks down the building blocks in your hair and can cause damage. And you might find when your hair starts to need protein, it can't hold the curl as well. One of the most common phrases that curlies use when they say their hair needs protein is that hair feels limp and mushy when it's wet. So as I said, keratin, which is the main component of your hair, is a protein, and things such as amino acids, which is found in eggs, and collagen, which is found in gelatin, are all proteins. And as a result, you'll often see those ingredients in homemade protein treatments. So you can get hair products that have protein in the ingredients, but it goes without saying, you need to make sure you're having plenty of protein in your diet, so eating things such as eggs and red meat. Protein deficiency, so not having enough protein in your diet, can lead to things such as hair thinning, excessive shedding, and dulling of your hair colour. Next, I'm going to talk about things called humectants. Humectants work by drawing in moisture from the air. So dry, coarse hair tends to favour products that have humectants in the ingredients because it can help smooth and hydrate your hair. However, the extra moisture in your hair can cause frizz in certain hair types. This is because the water molecules in the air act as tiny magnets to the proteins in your hair and pull the hair in all different directions. I think we're all well aware of that particular Friends episode. Now, you can also get what's called film-forming humectants. Film-forming humectants work by not only drawing the moisture in from the air, but also forming a seal around the cuticle of your hair, so it helps trap that moisture in. And finally, I hope you're still with me, I'm going to talk about hair porosity. There are three types of hair porosity: high porosity, medium porosity, and low porosity. And that refers to the hair's ability to attract and retain moisture. The outer layer of the hair, as I said, is called the cuticle. And somebody with high porosity will have a more open cuticle. People with high porosity hair generally comment on the fact that their hair soaks up water like a sponge and it doesn't take long to air dry. At the other end of the scale, low porosity hair, as you might have guessed, has a closed cuticle. People with low porosity hair tend to comment on the fact that when they apply products, it just sits on the surface of the hair, their hair takes a long time to air dry, and their hair actually repels water. So they will spray their hair with water, for example, and instead of the hair absorbing the water, it just sits in the little beads on top of the surface. Now, you might have seen a way of testing hair porosity is what's called the water test. The water test, for those that don't know, is people advise to take a piece of hair and put it in some water. If it sits at the top of the water, it's seen as low porosity. If it floats in the middle, it's seen as medium porosity. And if it sinks, it's seen as high porosity because it's just absorbed all that water. It's not really seen as an accurate way of testing for hair porosity anymore because the surface tension of the water can provide an inaccurate result. So your hair could float, so therefore you think it's low porosity, when actually it's high porosity. The way that I prefer to test for your hair's porosity is to take a strand of hair and gently run your finger up against the grain. If your hair feels quite rough to the touch, that's a rough indication that you could have high porosity because what you're feeling is the open cuticle. And if it's smooth, that generally means you'll have low porosity because the cuticle is closed up nice and tight. Obviously, the main factor that's going to affect your hair's porosity is your genetics, but external factors can make a difference. So for example, using chemicals and bleach can cause the cuticle to open, and as a result, that can change your hair from low porosity to high porosity. Now, as always, every single head of hair is different. For example, I consider myself to have low porosity hair because when I spray it with water, it just sits on the surface in those little beads. And when I run my finger up the hair cuticle, it feels smooth. However, I regularly colour my hair with permanent hair dye, and my hair likes protein, which are both indicators of having high porosity hair. So that's why I said at the beginning of the video to try and not get too bogged down in the terminology that I'm using. Everyone's hair is different, everyone's hair reacts differently to protein and humectants, everyone has different porosity hair. This was just a fun little video and I hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit about the science behind curly hair. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. I've had a lot of fun filming this video. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and I will see you soon. Bye bye! So before I start, I just want to say, try and remember what you're supposed to be doing. It's just hopefully share some hair. Sneeze. The oils that your scalps? How many scalps have you got? So things such as eggs, raw meat. So things like eggs, red meat, and broccoli. Broccoli is not a form of protein. I think we're all well aware, and false positive result. That makes it sound like a pregnancy test.